It's time now to talk a little sports, not necessarily just soccer, but sports with Gavin Beavers, RSL's teenage goalkeeper. And Gavin, thanks for spending a few minutes with us.
Of course, happy I can.
Do you like being introduced as a teenager? Did I just blow all my credibility with you right out of the gate?
No, I don't mind at all. I mean, it's nice also being 18, at sometimes, but at the same time, I wish I was a little bit older. So.
As an 18-year-old, first off, it's unusual that an 18-year-old is playing in Major League Soccer. It has certainly been done. You're not the first teenager, and you won't be the last. But nonetheless, you guys are kind of a small group, and your path to that point is different for every player. Yours is really different. Let's start first with your family. Parents, grandparents. Are there a lot of athletes in the family? Did people have a good idea you were going to have a lot of athletic ability when you were a little kid just because of your family?
Yeah, so my grandpas actually are about 6'3" to 6'5", both, and then but my grandmas are super small, and then so they both played basketball when they were kids, and my dad's only 5'11" and my mom's 5'9", and my mom she was a ballerina in San Francisco Ballet, and my dad actually went to USF and played at University of Portland for soccer. So he played for a bit and actually played with the under-20s in the World Cup. And but yeah, and then after he was done with school, he just kind of went to work. So they didn't really know, how I was going to turn out, whether I was going to be super tall or, whether I was just going to be 5'11", 6 foot. So.
Your dad's a soccer player, so does he put the soccer ball in the crib? Are you getting tips all along? Is he that dad, or is he hands off, the kid does whatever he wants, and you staggered into soccer on your own?
Yeah, there was more of like we're gonna try every sport, see how everything goes, and I just found that soccer is what I wanted to do. And I actually played basketball for a good bit in middle school. I was actually playing basketball more than I was playing soccer with my club team, and before I came to RSL, and yeah, and then once I came to RSL, it was 100%. It's go time. So.
Okay, I think a lot of people hear that and think, no, if he's a teenage soccer player, he had to be playing comp when he was 9 years old, and he had to be playing up 2 or 3 years. So soccer was just kind of one of the many things in the sports fruit salad, so to speak.
Yeah, it was definitely number one all the time. But basketball, I was having so much fun with it in middle school, with all my buddies, and we were really good. So we had a ton of fun winning, and my club team wasn't as great, so it was a bit rough, for me just to keep getting scored on and whatnot. But I think as I got here, my mindset totally changed, and it's all in soccer. So.
When you were playing with your club team, were you always a goalkeeper? Did you always have the size? You're a late bloomer with the growth, and you played out in the field. How did that work?
Yeah, so they kind of just were picking kids, how it usually goes, and I ended up just being one of the taller kids on the team, and they were like, yeah, we'll just throw you in goal. And I actually really loved it and I enjoyed it. And I kind of just stuck with it, and kept working at it. And it kind of just grew from there. And I progressed and I got taller and my size got there. So it all worked out.
So you're not playing at the highest level, and you're not all the way into it, and yet somehow RSL finds you and puts you in the academy. Your life really pivots at that moment. How does that happen?
Yeah, so my goalkeeper coach back in Vegas, he actually knew one of the guys that was working at RSL, and I ended up getting a trial. And they didn't have a 15s team at the time because my first year was their first year of the 15s, and so I went and trained with the 17s, and it was definitely a shell shock just because I had never trained, at that high of a level. So I thought I didn't do great, but I did good enough to get a spot for the next year. And yeah, once I got here, it was full go, and I mean it was totally different life, it was wake up at 7 a.m., train, just the whole 9 yards. So it was totally different.
So it happens pretty quickly for you because were you 15 with your first Monarch start, or were you 16?
What was I? I was 16. Yeah, I was 16.
You were 16. I was told a story by an RSL season ticket holder who says he was at the Monarchs match and he thought it was your first one, and they advertised, the 16-year-old goalkeeper is going to make his debut, and this guy's hardcore, so of course he wants to see. And he told me that he shouted at you, "Hey Gavin, did you drive here yourself or did your mom drop you off?" And he remembered your response. Do you remember this happening?
Yeah, I remember it happening. I do not remember my response, but I do remember this, yeah, because I mean it was my first game. I was taking everything in, and it was definitely a great experience, especially with the Monarchs fans. I mean they're great.
He said you yelled back, "I drove myself here," and you were beaming, and he thought, man, he may be a future pro, but he is really a 16-year-old kid because he's had his license for like a week, and I just got my license and I drove myself here. So he thought
Yeah.
that was pretty charming. At the same time, you got to go from charming to you're competing against older players. How comfortable is that when you're 16 and in a Monarchs game you might be seeing a 19-year-old, a 21-year-old, a 22-year-old? That's a pretty big age gap at that point. How was that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely different. Once you get into the pro environment, I mean, everybody's competing for that number one spot. Throughout every position. So, just making sure that I went in, and we have a great group of guys, like especially goalkeeper union wise, with Mirza Harambasic and when Jeff Dusnup was there, and we have Fernando Delgado. So we had a great core of just guys to compete with and like get better every day. And I think at the end of the day, we all want to be at the peak of soccer, so we all want to help each other out. So it's been a great experience, just being with older guys and realizing like, hey, like this is a job at the end of the day, and you got to do what you're supposed to do.
How did your parents take all this? You come home one day, how did you get a phone call? Hey, we want to go to RSL Academy. We want your teenager to move to another state. Were they ready to let you go? Did they feel good about that?
Yeah, they definitely were not ready to let me go quite yet, because I had an offer from Sporting Kansas City to go there as well, and RSL kind of just like trickled in there. I was getting done with middle school, and I was like, I don't really want to go anywhere else. Like I'd been so many different like places to go train for a couple of weeks, and I was just tired. But my dad's like, we're gonna go, so it was definitely a transition for them too. Just not having me at the house, and my mom and dad were super bummed. But they come up a ton, so it's been super nice, to have them up here. Even now, like they come to almost every game, even if it's away. So I have a great support system.
Well, was that one of the advantages RSL had when Sporting KC was recruiting you too? I mean, Vegas to Kansas City, that's not a very doable drive, but Salt Lake in 6 hours or so.
Exactly, yeah. And Sporting Kansas City, I had to live with a host family, so I was like, yeah, I don't really know about that, but I had a dorm. The dorms, obviously, at the academy were 10 times better, so, and the school's right there, so it's just a lot easier, and a great decision.
Well, that's an incredible story to go from taking soccer semi-seriously but being in love with basketball to all of a sudden being with the Monarchs and then with RSL. And so when you make the move to RSL and you get your first start, the Open Cup game is 3 days before your 18th birthday. When you walk out there, did you feel like you fit? Did it take a minute to think, okay, I'm with RSL now, this is different? Or the fact that you're playing Vegas and it's a USL stadium and opponent, did that ease you into it?
No, I mean, Open Cup's one of those tournaments where every game's a grind, and you can go 120 minutes. So I had to be, switched on from minute 1 to minute 120, which it ended up taking us to, and just being able to go back home. I mean, I went to the Lights' first game that they ever played. So being able to play at Cashman and, be in front of my family and friends, it was unreal experience and just super cool. So.
Well, that's an incredible story, Gavin, and good luck going forward. We'll be following you. We'll be watching you with RSL, and thanks for spending a few minutes with us here on Talkin Sports.
Yeah, thank you for having me.